Bill, my associate, and in this segment, we're going to talk about cleaning up your organizational clutter. And Bill happens to know a lot about this topic. And Bill, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, so the story that it's kind of an embarrassing story, but one time many years ago, I had I'm not the most organized person, so I had an extremely cluttered desk, and my boss came in to talk to me, and it became really conspicuous, like your desk is a mess, and you really need to work this out. And so I said it first. I said I really need to clean up my desk, and he said something interesting and generous. He said, "Yeah, I don't know that how you can actually focus and get anything done." And essentially the implication was I had so much stuff crowding in on my space. It was a very limited space that I had to work. And it was absolutely true. So I cleaned it up and I actually got some elbow room and it worked out pretty well for me. So we have, there's a very popular author and what she calls herself organization consultant, Marie Kondo. And she's very popular right now, sold millions of copies of her books and had a TV show. And I think that what we're talking about here is really resonant with what she's trying to do, although she's doing it in a domestic setting. But it's the same thing. And we have two major points to make here. First of all, we have spatial clutter. We have things in our organization that prevents our effective movement. And this can have an impact on safety, on security, on all sorts of things, and simply and on production as well. So the second dimension of this comes from another kind of more time-based discussion, which is that in the past we've made decisions with our organization that look strange today. Let's say we got a new piece of machinery and we had to write procedures related to that machinery. And then the procedures stay on the books, but we don't use the machinery anymore. So over time, we do lots of things organizationally, either be an org chart or procedures or instructions of some type that have no relevance anymore, and we don't go back and clean up the books. Heck, even in the United States law, we can go back in history and see, laws that are actually on the books and we can get arrested for that have to do with horse-drawn carriages and such things. So people can go and talk about fun stories about that. We all need to clean out the things that historically made sense in the past, but they no longer make sense now. So, Rob, what's your experience with this from an organizational standpoint?
Yeah, I got to tell you, some of my clients have so much clutter. For example, an area we're all familiar with is the corrective action databases. So every time we have an event, we generate corrective actions. And when you have thousands and thousands of open corrective actions in your corrective action program databases, that is organizational clutter. They all require not someone, but hundreds of folks to divert their attention from mission critical tasks to go figure out how to address the issue, how to close it out, how to document it, and get the closures approved and all that. All that is non-mission critical stuff, and it really clutters an organization. And to add to what Bill was saying, not only do you have those types of organizational clutters, the physical and so on, you have mental clutter. When folks are worried about all kinds of other things on their desk, not the literal desk, on their plate, they're not focusing where they need to focus. And that kind of thing is explained also really well by someone called Ellen Langer. That, Bill is someone who studied Ellen Langer in her book, Mindfulness. Bill, tell us about Langer's work.
The most important thing to point out with Ellen Langer's work is her idea of mindfulness as being able to focus on those mission critical tasks. So I like to use the example all the time of the stick shift. So if I'm in a stick shift, and here's where she makes a distinction between mindful tasks and then less mindful tasks. And if I'm in a stick shift, the shifting of the car and the pushing in the clutch, that activity has to actually go into muscle memory. And extreme competence in shifting allows me then to focus on the most important mindful task, which is keeping my eyes on the road. So I don't want to be mindful on exactly where the gear shift goes, because that makes no sense, which is focus on the inside the car. I want that to be a less mindful task. And so we can distinguish which are less mindful tasks requiring competency and what are mindful tasks which will lead us towards safe and effective operations. So that's the third kind of clutter, is get rid of all the stuff that distracts us from those mission critical tasks from a mental standpoint, and then also train ourselves from this competency standpoint that all that stuff that needs to go into muscle memory can go into muscle memory, and now I can focus on exactly what the organization should be doing. I have a safer organization and a more effective organization in that way. So now we've identified 3 major clutter areas: physical space, time-related organizational or procedural clutter, and then finally mental clutter, which can cause us troubles. HCA can identify these areas as a cause. I can be distracted from the thing that I was supposed to take action on because I was inhibited by these things that we've just identified.
Yeah. When my son was about 12, I took him to see a friend who happened to have bought a brand new Challenger, one of those 2-door Dodge with a Hemi engine, and it's a stick shift. And, my son had never seen me drive stick shift. And so I took him for a joyride. And I popped that thing in the second gear around a corner and spun out the tires and brought out the back end around the corner and made a really cool turn. And my son was gripping the side of the car, and he was just pale as could be as I took this corner in the old school race car driving kind of way. And he turns to me and goes, "What did you do? How did you learn to do that?" I says, "Well, I don't know, Robbie. I drove stick shift for 28 years before I ever drove an automatic car. It's all muscle memory. I'm just focusing on keeping the car on the road. My body's doing the rest, whatever it takes." So that's muscle memory. That's what mindfulness is all about. You need to focus on mission critical tasks. The rest of it has to be on autopilot, right? And one of the things about clutter I wanted to add here to close this out. Imagine that after every single issue, we generate a few corrective actions, and in some cases many corrective actions depending on the level of significance. What you're creating is an enormous amount of clutter in terms of the procedure enhancements, the training enhancements, all of the corrective actions you're trying to implement, which, as we know, a lot of them are band-aids on symptoms. And you're creating unbelievable organizational clutter in terms of the numbers of requirements that you have to meet. You're creating many, many more procedural enhancements that really are cluttering your procedures. You're adding to your training load, which is not really necessary because you're not taking a holistic approach in terms of your corrective actions. And so you are cluttering the organization by not doing things right. And that's another thing that Blue Dragon can teach you how to do, is to declutter by integrating your corrective actions into a single set without duplication, integrating your causes into a single set without duplication, and then any issues that comes down the road, you'll understand what causes it and where the corrective actions are already in place without having to generate 10 new actions for this issue. So I know we're throwing a lot at you here, but this is a really important area. So clean up your organization, declutter is hugely important, and Blue Dragon can help. Call us, ask us how.
And just to kind of bring it back to Marie Kondo, if she's watching our videos, I only know you by reputation, and I've seen a couple of your television shows. I have not read your books. If you'd like to write another book and you'd like some good consultants to do it with for cleaning up organization clutter, we would be very excited to do that with you.
Yes, I'd like to meet Marie myself. We have some clutter in our own house. Thanks, Bill. Thanks very much, and we'll see you in the next segment.